Welcome to the Hastings Shadmehry Show with your hosts, Andee Hastings and Mally Shadmehry. Dive into the heart of family law as Andee and Mally bring clarity to legal challenges, celebrate client victories, and share the wisdom of their combined expertise. Get ready for a journey into empowerment and advocacy right here where your story matters.
Hello, and welcome to the Hastings Shadmehry Show, where we delve into the heart of family law and the stories that shape our lives. I'm Mally Shadmehry, and joining me is Andee Hastings. Andee, how are you?
I am great, Mally. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, but I just need to talk about it. I'm exhausted. I'm a dog mom, and it's storming here. It's storming really bad. It's storming right now. Thundering, whatever. I have 2 dogs. Stormy's great. She comes to work every day. That's my little pit mix. She thinks she's a lawyer. She thinks she knows everything and what's going on. But I've also got a big floofy boy at home, Cohen Bear. He's like 110 pounds. He's 9 years old. And as he's gotten older, he's gotten more anxiety. He hates thunderstorms. So at the first hint of thunder, this boy wakes me up. This happens last night. I'm having great sleep. Sleep is a priority for me. And there's this crying big floofy man. I have to get out of bed at like 3 a.m., go sit on the floor with him, pretty much half asleep, hold him, hug him. I fell asleep sitting up with my back on the wall in my bedroom, holding this big man. And Stormy couldn't care less. She stayed in bed. And I'm like, oh my God. So I'm tired. And look, I know it's not a human baby keeping me up. I get it, but OMG, I'm tired. That's my status.
I am so sorry.
It's really cute, though. He's so sweet.
He is so
scared
sweet.
Me in. But, okay. The question I got to ask, which one are you today? Warrior or diplomat?
Oh, warrior for sure.
Why?
Well, speaking of dogs, somebody that works in this building left their dog locked in a car yesterday all day, and that just makes me want to commit homicide.
Yeah. Don't do that, idiot.
I know. And also, somebody was rude with you on an email, and that also makes me want to commit homicide. But of course, you handled it beautifully, as usual. You didn't need me. I just wanted to be like... So, warrior, that's where I am today.
Love it.
How about you?
Definitely warrior as well. Definitely. And yes, I did get a rude email. And I'm like, oh, sweetie, no. We don't act like that. I will give you my all, and I'll be respectful, but the second you get abusive with me, no. No, sir, in this case. We did shut it down, but it's triggering for me. And that's one of my favorite parts of my relationship with Andee is when I am warrior mode most of the time, but I've got a partner that I can go to who can say, let's slow it down before you go in for the kill, because that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go for the jugular right off the rip. Andee will say, let's think about this. Let's be calculated. And after getting to work with you for so many years, now I naturally know, okay, before we fire this off, let's think about it instead of just going for it. Let's not do ready, fire, aim. Let's ready, aim, fire. I did that with this, but there was some muscle in the things I was saying. I said, here's what we're going to do. My terms or no terms. That's what we're going to do. So warrior, that's the answer. And on that note, here is what we're going to talk about today. Long anticipated. Temporary protective orders, TPOs, restraining orders. They're all one and the same. TPOs, we're going to talk to you about what they are and a little bit of the ins and outs on them. So Andee, what is a TPO?
Well, TPO, as you said, is a temporary protective order, and it's designed to allow people to get protection, a court-ordered protection, in the event that they're experiencing some kind of violence or stalking. And, there are 2 parts to the TPO process. I'm probably jumping ahead, but
that's okay.
First you get what's called an ex parte order, where you get actual temporary protective order that you go in and you tell the court what's going on, and they issue it, and then they have you come back to obtain a permanent protective order, which is usually a 12-month protective order.
Okay, so we'll go back to that in a second, but let's talk about...
I knew I jumped ahead.
Let's talk about what sort of situations would prompt the need for a TPO? Who are the people that actually need a TPO?
They are people who are living together, even if they're not married, people that are married, even if they're not living together, people that have children, basically any type of familial relationship. And in the case of stalking, it doesn't have to be a familial relationship. But they're experiencing some sort of violence, whether or not it's a battery. A simple battery is where somebody hits you, but it doesn't leave a mark. There's assault, where you're in fear for your safety. They haven't actually hit you, but they've made you fearful that they will and that you're going to receive some sort of injury. And then, of course, the more expanded versions of those kinds of acts, like aggravated assault or aggravated battery. We get people trying to run people over with cars. That's an aggravated assault. But it's all the different acts, crimes against persons, and that's one of the pieces that you have to show. You need to show that you're in fear for your safety and the likelihood of future violence will occur.
Right. And so what Andee kind of described is, in Georgia, your ability to get a TPO is mandated by the Family Violence Protective Act. That's OCGA 1913-1. And there's several statutes that follow after that. And there are basically two prongs as far as requirements. One, you have to have some sort of a familial relationship towards one another. And there's some caveats to that. You could be just boyfriend and girlfriend in some of these situations, but it's very fact specific. That's where you just have to meet with a lawyer. If you even think you need one, they will tell you whether you qualify for a TPO. So that's prong one. What is the relationship between you and the other person? And prong two is you have to be violated in certain ways under the law. And as Andee said, that can be battery, assault. It can be criminal damage to property, criminal trespass. It can be stalking. There's all these different factors, and you have to meet what the law says in order to just qualify to even file for a TPO. So some examples, that I've experienced over the years. The people they're married, things are heating up. Divorce is probably on the table, but nobody's made up their mind yet. Oftentimes what I see is that things have been heated in the household, but nobody's made up their mind on divorce, and it takes this crazy event happening and maybe getting a TPO to actually prompt the divorce happening after that. And so things like, we got in an argument in the driveway, and he wanted my cell phone, and he smacked my phone out of my hands. He pushed me. He was punching holes in the walls. He crashed through the front door. This happened in one of my cases. Almost hit the kid with the door, charged at me, didn't hit me, acted like he was going to hit me, things like that. Definitely had women being the abusers as well. It goes both ways. I'm going to tell y'all one of my favorite stories about a TPO in that regard in a little. So what happens next? Andee kind of went into. What do you do? Once you're like, oh my gosh, I just feel like in fear for my safety, I need to talk to someone. What are the steps? First, you call the police.
Exactly.
First, you call the police. When you have any fear of your safety and I need to do something to protect myself, it's call the police. Make a police report. The person may get arrested. But I think that that has to always be the number one. Then you get on the phone with a lawyer, get a consultation. Because when you're on the phone and you say this event happened, the intake staff should be trained to know, look, this looks like a potential TPO. We need to get you in for a consultation right away. Because in TPOs, if you are going to file a case, the longer you wait, the weaker your case is. You need to get to a lawyer right away if you think you have a case for a TPO or you just don't know what to do and you're in fear for your safety. The good lawyers are going to know, let's get this person in right away. And there's a reason for that. So Andee, tell us about once they make the call to the lawyer and things are ready, they know they have a case for a TPO, what are the steps to obtain one?
Well, one of the reasons, as Mally was saying, you want to act quickly because failure to act quickly can hurt you actually, but it can actually hurt you when you ultimately do seek a protective order is you're asking the court to take something that somebody else has done very seriously. And how quickly you move through that process to address it yourself kind of informs the court as to how seriously you take it, how much danger you feel. And they'll take their cues from that. So you do want to act quickly when you reach out to an attorney. Again, I started this a minute ago. I'm sorry. The first step is to go to the courthouse in the county in which you live or the county in which the other person lives, depending. And you go to the Superior Court and you will apply for a temporary protective order.
And people can do that on their own without a lawyer. You can go do your own petition for TPO, file it yourself. But a lot of times it's a lot weaker when you do that. And it's wiser to at least talk to the attorney first. And sometimes I send my clients on their own after I coach them. I'll say, go to the courthouse and do this. Then you don't have to pay the lawyer to draft all this and do it. But anyway, okay, so a petition has to be drafted in Superior Court and filed with Superior Court. And then what happens?
You see a judge, and you have the opportunity to tell the judge what's happened. It's usually what's contained in your TPO, because you'll be required to give a description of what's happened recently, if there are prior acts of violence, whatever the court might need to know to understand the danger in the situation. And the judge will then make a determination as to whether or not to grant the temporary protective order. And again, the other side is not there. They're only hearing your side of it. And they will either issue or deny the protective order. 9 times out of 10, they issue it. Courts are not going to take chances with people who are coming and saying, please help me, I need help. And then after that, the sheriff will actually serve the other side with the protective order, and they will be required to leave the residence at that point.
Yes.
Point in time.
Yes. So that initial order, the judge enters, the ex parte order, deputy goes, serves the person. That person, if y'all live under the same roof, they're going to be required to get out of the house. They're not allowed to go back until there's a hearing date. So in this ex parte order that the judge first enters after you file your petition, it'll say, we're granting you this ex parte TPO, means temporary TPO, and we're giving you a trial date. They will usually list your trial date in that initial order so that when the deputy goes and serves the person, they say, hey, you're served. There's an ex parte order against you. You are now required to leave this house, collect your belongings, and they'll supervise them. Oh, we've had situations where it's taken up to 5 to 7 deputies with a drunk person one time to get him out of the house. They had to take him down to the ground. And this was wild just to get him out of the house. But they'll go around with the person usually, supervise them getting just some general belongings, and then get them out. And then everybody knows you've got your trial date. And Andee, tell us about these trial dates. Are they quick to happen or what?
Well, first of all, the law requires that they happen within 30 days of the date of the issuance of the ex parte order. So you're on a pretty tight timeline, and everything moves very quickly. As lawyers, when we're dealing with a TPO case, we kind of have to drop everything and be ready to go try your case and protect you at that hearing. In the meantime, the other side is not allowed to have any contact with you directly or indirectly, which means they can't have all their friends and family members contact you. That's what indirect contact is. And if they violate that during that time period, that's something else that we need to address. But we prepare for the hearing, and then we go on whatever date they give us within that 30-day period. And the other side is there, presumably. Sometimes they don't show, but usually they do. Often they'll bring a lawyer to defend them and try to negotiate or try to get the TPO set aside. And we have a hearing, and we have to prove by probable cause that it's more likely than not that an act of violence occurred and that future violence is likely.
Yes. And oftentimes what we see, so a couple things. You need a lawyer that knows how to get to court and go to court fast. I actually love doing TPOs. That's my cup of tea, because I am not the type of lawyer that likes to sit at a desk. I need to be in court. So when I get a case in that's going to court in 2 weeks, I'm like, let's go. Let's do it. Give me all your evidence. Let's line it up. Let's go to trial. You need the lawyers that are in court a lot and they're ready to try these cases. You are going to spend, depending on the complexity of your case, you're going to front load your costs. It's going to be expensive usually to go and try these cases. It just depends on how complicated the circumstances are. But when you have a serious situation, especially if there's children involved, and we need to, at the TPO, which I'm going to get to in a second, we need to get you temporary alimony, child support, things like that. This is basically, it's kind of a fast track to getting you financial support without even filing for divorce yet. You can do that in a TPO. But the more complicated that kind of stuff is, and we need to get into finances as well as the abuse, it can get expensive. Your lawyer would discuss that with you when you guys do a consultation, but it's just something to bear in mind. A lot of work, you're going to trial, it's a lot of stress, you need to be in the right hands and be prepared to pay something to get safety. So then when you're at the trial, that again, as Andee said, that needs to be by law, within 30 days of the court issuing the ex parte order. What to expect in trial. So a lot of people will come and say, I think I have grounds for a TPO. Can you just take me to get a TPO? And then we filed for divorce after. And it can be really good for a divorce to do a TPO first. But it really, what it comes down to is, are you really in jeopardy? Is your safety in jeopardy? And let's just say, yes, you are. It's a great case for a TPO. We need to get you safety. Here's what it looks like. We go to trial. We prove that this act of domestic violence has occurred. We would also go with a parenting plan, a temporary parenting plan that we've created that said, usually we'll file for divorce while the TPO is pending and we're waiting on the trial date. And we'll say, hey, Your Honor, we've filed for divorce. We can figure out some stuff over there. But for now, we need this temporary parenting plan. We need temporary child support. We need temporary alimony. And under the Family Violence Protective Act, you can ask for attorney's fees in a TPO too. I find that judges are a little more likely to give you attorney's fees in a TPO than in a divorce, honestly. If they're reasonable. And so be prepared that it doesn't have to be just a TPO, a restraining order, which means stay away. Stay away. We'll talk about that in a second. It can also be, what are we doing with the house, the cars, the children? We can create a temporary arrangement on everything until we finalize it all in the divorce. So I think that's kind of a commonly not thought of thing when it comes to a TPO. So what about once the TPO is entered? What are some sort of things for people to be thinking about that, like when a TPO is entered at trial, what does that look like? Is it 12 months? Is it permanent? 3 years? What does life look like when when you win your TPO case? Then what happens?
So typically the order that is entered is a 12-month protective order from the date it's issued. And if you want to extend it, you usually have to come back and apply for that. That's a different situation, and usually you need to show that there's been some violation of the protective order in the interim in order to justify why it should be extended.
And violating a TPO is a felony, I believe.
It can be either a misdemeanor or a felony. There is a misdemeanor violation of a protective order that's not used very often.
Right.
When I was a prosecutor, I dealt with those cases some, but typically, it says on the face of the protective order that if you violate, that's an aggravated stalking because you're contacting them or something like that.
And that's automatically a felony, right?
Correct.
And I've seen some serious situations where we won a TPO and then the person that the TPO is against, they violate it by continuing to contact the person or whatever. You file a motion of sorts into the TPO case and say, this has been violated. A lot of times those people will actually get arrested for violating a TPO. And then you can ask at this additional hearing that, Your Honor, he or she's been arrested. They've violated this TPO. We are now asking that you make this TPO permanent. That's pretty rare. Sometimes judges extend them for 6 months. Sometimes they extend them for 3 years.
3 years. Mm-hmm.
I had a judge one time enter a TPO against my client. He had really messed up and we were defending it, but knew there was a lot of, he needed some help. He had alcohol issues and he needed to get himself together. But the judge was nice to him and gave him gave the wife a 6-month TPO instead of 12-month. And the judge said, look, you come back to me in 6 months and show me that you've done all these things. I will take away the TPO and give you your gun rights back, because when a TPO is entered against you, you lose your gun rights. You have to surrender weapons. You go into a registry, and a lot of people have a huge problem with that. I also heard judges say they don't really know if that's even constitutional. So maybe we see future legislation on that. But right now, you can't have your weapons or your firearms when you have a TPO that's been entered against you. And even when that ex parte order gets handed to you and you're served at your house with it or whatever, you got to give your firearms up right away. But this judge in particular, he said, look, 6 months, keep it together, do this, come back, show me you've done it, behave yourself. I will take away the TPO. You can have your gun rights back so that you can be able to go hunting with your son in the fall.
I remember that.
It was a great outcome for that client. And the client really did. He wanted to go and be able to go hunting with his son. That's how they were bonding. And that judge really took to that. He said, I have developed so much in my life spending time in the woods with my dad and my grandpa. And anyway, I liked that story.
Well, something to keep in mind with that, too, is that's unusual.
It is.
That judges carve that out because, we deal with domestic violence all the time. And sometimes it is a one-off. It's situational. It's not the norm between two people, but somebody needs protection. And that was a situation, I think, where the judge felt like it was a combination of alcohol-induced sort of one-off behavior.
Yeah. I mean, and we really tried that case hard. He paid a lot of money for us to get that outcome for him. I don't think that could have happened if we didn't put the work in like we did, to be honest. We went so deep.
Yeah.
But okay, so there's the option of extending TPOs. There also there's a rule of thumb. If you have a TPO, you must keep a certified copy of that TPO with you at all times. Don't unstaple it, keep it intact. That's always my rule for my clients. Get several copies. Keep one in your car, keep one wherever, in your briefcase, in your purse, whatever, have it with you. Because if that person shows up because the terms of a TPO say that person has to stay usually at least 500 yards away from you. They cannot approach you. They cannot
or your
approach.
work,
Yep,
or school. So if you've got kids, you're going to want to give a certified copy to the school and let them know, because there's all kinds of issues with people basically violating protective orders at their kids' schools. So yeah, you definitely have to have several copies and keep them pretty much everywhere you go routinely.
Yep. And I mean, a lot of times what we end up doing is saying, okay, we've got this TPO trial coming, but we also have filed for divorce. One option is then to dismiss the TPO, but enter into a consent order in the divorce that says stay away from me and basically accomplishes what the TPO would have. I see that a lot. I don't love that. I like doing a TPO. It sends a message. The person goes on a registry. We're not here to play around. I find that lawyers that are scared to go to trial take that route of reach an agreement and put it in the divorce case. So I usually veer away from that unless maybe I'm like, maybe our case isn't that strong.
Maybe if we have the more problem facts.
Or the client went and filed their own TPO before checking, meeting with an attorney. And we know from the facts that, look, you put in your petition all this. It's not going to deliver the way you think it is. You don't meet what the Family Violence Protective Act says. It's best we just push to the divorce. But if it's a good case for TPO, do not do that.
No. One thing I don't like, and I don't know how you feel about this, Mally, but when lawyers try to push it into a consent order in the divorce case, that makes me bristle. And I tend to not agree to that on almost every occasion, because what they're trying to do is sort of blame shift. So rather than having a protective order that protects this person against this other person's violent acts, the other side wants to make it look like, oh, we all need to be restrained from one another.
Yeah,
and
make it mutual.
That's a very abusive-minded tactic. This is the former domestic violence prosecutor coming out, so sorry. But that's not okay. And so, Mally's right. Lawyers that don't want to go to trial, especially quick turnaround trials, as TPOs are, will try to do that, but it's not advisable to agree to that unless there are very specific reasons and your lawyer supports handling it that way.
Yes. Okay. So I have two favorite TPO stories of mine that I want to share. One is me winning a TPO for my client, and one is me defending my client when his wife was trying to get a TPO against him, and we won. Okay. The first one is me obtaining a TPO for my client. It's a stalking TPO, and it's a little bit raunchy. So, yeah, but it's true. So I'm going to tell you. And this is the life of a family law attorney. Just weird shit. So this girl, I can't remember if she was 17 or 18. She may have just turned 18. I believe both of these kids were in high school and they were seniors. And so they must have just hit age 18. This was maybe 7 years ago. So all these facts are not crystal clear in my mind, but about 18 years old. So maybe right on the cusp of 18. And my client, so we go to trial. It's a TPO, and here's the case.
I know this story.
She's adorable. She's like a very cheerleader type. And he sadly, I mean, there's no other way to say it. He's just a troubled kid, very odd bird kid. And my client had been consistently receiving weird Snapchat messages from unknown accounts. These messages on Snapchat, they were sexual in nature. Then they turned into photographs of my client that she would put on her social media cute little pictures of her. But this person, she didn't know who the person was. It was like an anonymous Snapchat that kept sending her messages. The person would print out pictures of her face, like zoom in on them, and print them out from her social media. Oh my God, this is so awkward, okay? Print them out, cut holes in her mouth, and then stick his penis through the hole in the picture and send pictures of that to her on Snapchat.
It's not funny. I don't know why I'm
not
laughing, but it's crazy.
I had to deliver that in court. Your Honor, here's the facts. He would stick his penis through and and the judge is like, oh my God. Not only that, I mean, it also turned into, would print pictures of her face zoomed in with semen all over her face and take pictures of that and send it to her as well. And just wait till you hear what his explanation was of those. So what happens was a private investigator from the sheriff's department gets involved. They're able to trace IP addresses and all these things and figure out from what home are these Snapchat messages coming from. Well, they determine it's this person. They figure out who the person is, and it's this kid that goes to school with her. She's like, sometimes I see him in the gym. Otherwise, I don't really know who that is. I've never spoken to this person. The messages became threatening to her, and I can't remember why. Things like, if you don't message me back, I'm going to leak pictures of this about you. I'm going to say these things about you. They became threatening.
Mm-hmm.
And we go to trial, and the kid is there and defends himself, and he did not have a lawyer, which was disastrous. I was very delicate in how I handled the day in court. You're not going to come hard at a kid, right? But he had serious mental issues. And he admitted that he was sending the pictures. But what he said about the semen on her face on these pictures, I said, okay, so you've sent pictures with your semen on her face to her. No, I didn't do that. I'm like, okay, well, let's look at Exhibit 37. Okay, so you're telling the court that this is not your semen on her photo of her face. Nope. Here's what he said it was. He said, what I did was I mixed cornstarch with water and sprinkled it all over the picture. And that's that. And I was like, okay. But your point was to make it appear as though it was semen. He's like, yeah. I'm like, okay. And the judge, and I knew the judge, and he was just like, and anyway, the judge granted the TPO. The kid violated the TPO. He kept coming to the gym, knowing she was there. You cannot do that. When a TPO is entered against you, you cannot approach within 500 yards of the person. If you are in a grocery store, for example, and you see somebody that has a TPO against you, you must leave. You got to leave. I see that a lot.
I do too.
The person that's accused and it has been, the TPO against them, they're like, well, she can't be in here. I'm here first. Nope. Oh, Stormy's hitting me. Stormy, oh, you want to say hi? You can. Sorry. Stormy stays by me at all times. My emotional support animal. Sorry.
Also, it's thundering.
She's thundering. We're scared. What were you going to say? These people that they're like, get out. I was here first.
I was here first. It's like, no, you leave first. When you have a TPO against you, you have to turn and go the other way. And it shocks me how many times people.
It's all the time. It's scary. It's, excuse me, the mindset of an abuser, to be honest. So he violates the TPO by continuing to come to the gym, by circling around the gym parking lot multiple times, literally just to intimidate her. So we did file for an extension of the TPO. And what I can't remember is, did it get extended 3 years, 12 permanent? I can't remember, but we won attorney's fees. He was incarcerated. He was arrested for violating that TPO. I have no idea, sadly, what happened with that kid, because I do think he was 18 at that point, incarcerated for a felony for aggravated stalking. And this is an example of 2 people that were never married, never in a relationship, but he stalked her. So you can get a stalking TPO if you don't have a relationship with the person. Anyway, I remember one time you had to write a letter to one of my exes to leave me alone because he was stalking me.
Yes. And we call that a cease and desist. It was a do or die, mostly. And that's the thing I want people to remember, because sometimes people are like, what's the point? But if you've got a protective order in your hand against somebody and they're there, their mere presence, you can call the police and they can be arrested on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the reasons why it's important to have one. It is just a piece of paper. You know, if they're coming at you, you need to protect yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But it's important for people to remember that a court has already decided that person is a danger to you. So you don't have to argue about it with a police officer or prove your point. And it's important to protect yourself.
Yes. And I remember in this scenario we're talking about, for me, this was 5 years ago or 6 or something. I do this for a living. I do it for a living. I've done TPOs since my first year of practice, and I love them. But when it is your own life, I mean, I froze. I remember when Andee sent that letter, I just remember throwing up. Like, I was so scared. And it was a cease and desist where we said, if you show up anywhere she's at one more time or whatever, we will get a TPO against you. And I remember that person did leave me alone after that letter was sent. But I remember he would contact the firm. Remember that?
Oh,
to ask
I
for
do.
weird things. He's like, well, if I can't contact her or show up where she's at, which would happen, then I'm going to call the firm and ask for weird things. He did that for a little bit, and then it stopped.
Yeah, because I told them to put him through to me.
It was so crazy. But that's part of the point, is you can get paralyzed. Even me knowing the ins and outs of the law, knowing what was real or not, when you are facing these abusive situations, it is incredibly scary. And you need guidance and support. And our judges here are fabulous.
They're so
about
good.
really helping. But here we go. Here's another story for you. People abuse the TPO system as well. Because I'll go in and I will get a TPO and fight for it, but I will defend people that are wrongfully accused as well. And here's one of my favorites. So I'm in court. I am there with, I remember I had this older client. She was in her 80s getting a divorce. And we did some hearing. I can't remember. This was also about 6 years ago. I take her, I finish her hearing, and this man comes up to me, and he's like, hey, I have a TPO with this judge in a couple of hours, and I don't have a lawyer, and I'm starting to think I need a lawyer. What do I do? And I'm like, oh, God, you have trial in 2 hours? I would need at least a week to prepare, but I'm like, you know what? Let me see my client out, and I'll come back and talk to you. So I do get her out the door and go talk to him. When I get back to him, he's surrounded by all these people, like a crowd. And I'm like, excuse me, why are you talking to this man? Like, you come here, talk to me. I'm like, what is going on? He's like, well, I was in the NFL. They know who I am. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that was just a side note. And I'm like, what? Okay. Tell me what's going on in your case. He tells me that basically they are married. His wife wants to get him out of the house, and she wants temporary alimony and child support. She wanted the fast track to get temporary support. The fastest way to do it was through a TPO. She fabricated stories about him. And I mean, I don't even remember all of the details about what she was claiming that he's pushed her. And what it came down to was there was one event at the end of before her filing for this TPO, and she wanted her wedding ring. He was holding it. He held it up in the air, and she started attacking him to get it out of his hand. And like, that's really what happened. And otherwise, she was making up stories about him, saying he pushed her. But the evidence, like what he told me, I was like, none of this seems like they can prove any of this. This is odd. So these fabricated stories, there's one event where he's holding her ring and she's attacking him to get it out of his hand. Immature of him to hold the ring, but like, you can't attack somebody. That's battery. And so he had also been primary caregiver of the children. She worked more than he did. He was retired. And all these things, she wanted custody of the kids, all these things. I remember talking to him. He paid me in the hallway, like called the firm and ran credit card or whatever we did. And I had my one scribbled piece of paper with notes crumpled up. I had to handwrite my entry of appearance to get that filed into the case, that right then and there. Walk in the courtroom. Oh, before we walked into the courtroom, I'll never forget this. I didn't know the other lawyer. I haven't seen her since, so I don't even remember her name. But she was not nice to me. She was not. I was like, hey, I'm Mally. Let's talk about this. I think we need to talk before we do this trial. I think you're going to want to talk to me. No, my client was crying over the weekend and we have a good case. And I'm like, oh, your client was crying. That's novel. Like, okay. Rude. She was rude. And they had all these exhibits. And here I am with my crumpled up piece of paper. I'm like, okay. And I remember that lawyer had a hole in the back of her dress and I did not even tell her. And I was like, you can walk around with a hole in the back of your dress if you're going to be rude to me in the hallway. Goodbye. So we went, did this trial. I remember the judge was like, Miss Shadmehry, you're doing this? Because I said, Your Honor, I just entered the case. ready to go. He's like, okay. This judge knew me too. He knows I always prepare and whatever. So we do this trial where we win. And the judge says, he said, I can't believe I'm saying this, but no, you haven't proven an act of family violence. In fact, I think you attacked him when you tried to get the ring out of his hand. So no, you're not getting a TPO. Everybody go home. Nobody gets attorney's fees. That's it. I remember my client picked me up off the floor hugging me, and he was so excited. Those people ended up staying married for a couple more years, and then they got divorced. We did the divorce. But that's an example of like people can abuse it. And you do need a lawyer. That man needed a lawyer. It could have gone really badly for him. I believe that TPO would have been entered against him if he didn't have a lawyer to really hammer home the facts and that this woman couldn't prove what she was claiming.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a special one. I love that client to this day. So, yeah. Until the next TPO, well, those are the stories for them for now. But that's what we're going to leave you with today. Please find us on Facebook, Instagram at Hastings Shadmehry. We're on Spotify. Follow the show. Message us. We love hearing what you guys want to hear about. Send us questions, please. We'll talk about the weird stuff. I love to hear what people want to hear about. Message us. Ask us to send you some swag. We want you as part of our wolf pack. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.